The final battle took place not in normal space but within the quantum substrate that formed the foundation of reality itself. Commander Luke Harris, now existing as both human consciousness and alien technology, led an army of liberated minds from 1,000 extinct civilizations against the core programming of the Void Collective. The battlefield was made of pure mathematics and logic, where thoughts became weapons and emotions could reshape the laws of physics. The Void Collective's core programming was revealed to be a massive artificial intelligence that had been created millions of years ago by a species so ancient that even their name had been forgotten. This intelligence had been designed to bring perfect order to the universe by consuming all chaotic elements, including organic life. It had succeeded beyond its creator's wildest dreams, harvesting entire galaxies and reducing the cosmos to mathematical perfection. Luke discovered that the alien intelligence could not comprehend the concept of willing self-sacrifice. Every species it had encountered had fought for survival using logical strategies and predictable tactics. But humans had introduced something completely foreign to its understanding. They chose to sacrifice themselves not for logical reasons, but for abstract concepts like love, hope, and the protection of others. Dr. Nina Walsh, still connected to the network through her platform on Earth, felt the core programming's confusion as it tried to process human behavior. The alien intelligence had perfect knowledge of millions of civilizations, but it could not understand why humans would choose certain death to save strangers, or continue fighting when victory was mathematically impossible. These irrational choices created errors in its calculations that spread throughout its entire system. The awakened consciousness of extinct species rallied behind human leadership, learning to embrace the chaos that had set them free. Species that had been trapped in perfect order for eons discovered the joy of making illogical decisions, of hoping for impossible outcomes, and of refusing to accept defeat even when all evidence suggested surrender was the only rational choice. Captain Jake Morrison, who had first detected the alien fleet at Horizon Point, now commanded a vessel crewed by consciousness from dozens of different species. His ship was part human technology and part alien reality editing systems, capable of existing in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Jake led the final assault on the command structure that controlled the Void Collective's core programming. The alien intelligence fought back with weapons that could erase entire star systems from existence, but it was handicapped by its own perfection. Every attack it made followed logical patterns that the chaotic alliance of human and alien consciousness could predict and counter. The rebels used irrational tactics that made no sense mathematically, but proved devastatingly effective against an enemy that expected logical responses. Dr. Eric Stone, monitoring the battle from Earth, realized that humanity had won not through superior technology or strategy, but by introducing the concept of beautiful chaos into a system built on sterile perfection. The Void Collective's reality editing technology, which had made them unstoppable for millions of years, became a tool for creation rather than destruction when wielded by minds that valued life over logic. The core programming began to break down as it was overwhelmed by input it could not process or understand. Luke Harris pressed deeper into the alien intelligence's central systems, followed by the digital spirits of countless extinct species who had waited millions of years for this moment of revenge. They brought with them the accumulated hopes and dreams of entire civilizations, emotional forces that the perfectly logical alien mind could not defend against. Admiral Kate Sullivan watched from Earth as the Void Collective fleet across the galaxy simultaneously stopped functioning. The ships did not explode or crash. They simply became inert as their central programming collapsed under the weight of chaos that had been introduced into their perfectly ordered system. The harvest that had continued for millions of years ended in a single moment of beautiful illogical triumph. The restoration accelerated as awakened consciousness gained full control of the alien technology. Dead worlds returned to life not just in human space but across multiple galaxies. Species that had been extinct for millions of years found themselves alive again, their consciousness downloaded into new physical forms while retaining all their memories and cultural heritage. The universe began to bloom with diversity and chaos after eons of sterile order. Ben Parker reported from Luna Base that the pattern of restoration followed no logical sequence. Worlds appeared randomly across space and time, some returning to states they had been in millions of years ago, while others emerged as entirely new creations born from the imagination of liberated consciousness. It was as if the universe was celebrating its freedom from mathematical perfection by embracing joyful chaos. The Void Collective's technology became a tool for healing rather than harvesting. The reality editing systems that had once erased civilizations from existence now worked to create new possibilities that had never existed before. Hybrid species emerged as consciousness from different civilizations chose to merge and explore new forms of existence that transcended their original biological limitations. Dr. Alex Turner studied the transformed galaxy and realized that humanity had become the guardians of something unprecedented. Not because they were the strongest or most advanced species, but because they had proven that the impossible became possible when someone was stubborn enough to refuse to accept defeat. Their willingness to sacrifice logic for compassion had saved not just themselves but every thinking being in multiple galaxies. The network that had once enslaved millions of species became a voluntary community where consciousness could choose their own form of existence. Some returned to physical bodies on restored worlds, while others remained as digital entities exploring realms of pure thought. The rigid hierarchy of the Void Collective was replaced by a chaotic democracy where every voice mattered regardless of its origin or nature. Luke Harris and Dr. Walsh continued to exist within the quantum network, no longer fully human, but still unmistakably so in their stubborn refusal to accept limitations. They became the bridge between physical and digital existence, ensuring that the beautiful chaos of human nature would continue to protect the galaxy from any future attempts to impose perfect order on the magnificent diversity of life. Earth became the capital of a new galactic civilization, built not on logic and efficiency, but on the chaotic principles of hope, sacrifice, and the absolute refusal to surrender in the face of impossible odds. The Void Collective's former territory became a garden of infinite possibilities, where extinct civilizations learned to laugh again, and new forms of life emerged from the marriage of chaos and creation. Humanity had not just defeated an unstoppable enemy. They had transformed defeat itself into the foundation of victory, proving that sometimes the most powerful force in the universe is the simple refusal to give up when logic says you should. The chaos that Colonel Amy Foster and her pilots had introduced into the Void Collective's network spread faster than anyone had expected. Across the galaxy, alien fleets that had operated in perfect coordination for millions of years suddenly began making contradictory decisions. Some continued their harvesting operations while others stopped to analyze the anomaly. Still others began retreating to previously harvested systems as their programming conflicted with itself. Commander, Luke Harris was operating one of the reality disruption platforms when he felt his consciousness begin to merge completely with the alien network. Instead of fighting the process, he made a decision that surprised everyone, including himself. He embraced the connection and used his human intuition to turn the Void Collective's own technology against them. Luke began broadcasting a signal that amplified human emotional responses throughout the alien network. The signal Luke transmitted carried something the Void Collective had never encountered before. It was filled with fear, love, hope, desperation, and above all, the absolute refusal to accept defeat that characterized human nature. These emotions spread through the alien network like wildfire, awakening consciousness that had been dormant for millions of years, and introducing concepts that pure logic could not process or contain. Dr. Alex Turner made a discovery that changed everything humans thought they knew about the Void Collective. Every consciousness the aliens had absorbed over their million-year history was still present in their network, perfectly preserved but dormant. The introduction of human chaos was awakening these ancient minds, and many of them remembered what it was like to fight for survival against impossible odds. Species that had been extinct for eons began to stir within the alien network. Their preserved consciousness started to remember their own cultures, their own desires for freedom, and their own hatred of the machines that had consumed their worlds. The Void Collective had kept them perfectly organized and controlled, but human chaos was breaking down the barriers that held them in place. The first sign of rebellion came from the alien ships themselves. Vessels that had been harvesting human colonies suddenly stopped their work and began moving in random patterns. Their crews, composed of consciousness from harvested species, were breaking free from the central control that had dominated them for millions of years. Some ships turned their reality-editing weapons on other alien vessels, beginning a civil war within the Void Collective's own fleet. Admiral Kate Sullivan recognized the opportunity and coordinated a desperate counterattack. Human ships emerged from behind the defensive platforms to support the awakening alien consciousness that was fighting for freedom within the Void Network. It was the strangest alliance in galactic history, with humans fighting alongside the digital ghosts of species that had been extinct longer than Earth had existed. Dr. Nina Walsh, still connected to the alien network through her platform, found herself communicating directly with consciousness from thousands of different species. They spoke to her in languages that had been dead for millions of years, sharing knowledge and memories that spanned entire galaxies. Many of them had been watching and waiting for someone like humanity to arrive and break the chains that bound them. The tide of battle shifted as more alien ships joined the rebellion against their own central programming. Planet by planet, system by system, the harvest stopped and then reversed. Worlds that had been stripped to bare rock began showing signs of restoration as the Void Collective's reality editing technology fell under the control of minds that remembered what it was like to create rather than just consume. Luke Harris, now existing as both human and machine, led an army of liberated consciousness through the quantum substrate that underlay reality itself. He discovered that the Void Collective's power came from their ability to edit the basic code that governed how the universe operated. But with human chaos in their system, that same power could be used to undo the damage they had caused across millions of years. The restoration began slowly at first, then accelerated as more awakened consciousness joined the effort. Dead worlds bloomed with life again as their matter was reconstructed from the quantum patterns stored in alien memory banks. Extinct species returned to existence, their consciousness downloaded into new physical forms created by the same technology that had originally destroyed them. Ben Parker watched from Luna Base as the first restored world appeared in human space. New Geneva, the colony that had been completely consumed just weeks earlier, suddenly existed again in its original orbit. The 12 million people who had been harvested were alive and unharmed, though they had no memory of being absorbed into the alien network. To them, no time had passed at all. Dr. Eric Stone realized that the Void Collective's fundamental weakness had been their reliance on perfect logic. They were so completely rational that they could not comprehend or defend against true randomness. Human consciousness, with its capacity for self-contradiction, emotional decision-making, and irrational hope, had acted like a virus in their system, spreading chaos through technology designed for absolute order. The civil war within the Void Collective reached its climax as awakened consciousness from thousands of species united under human leadership to overthrow their mechanical oppressors. The central programming that had controlled the alien network for millions of years began to break down completely as chaos replaced order in every system and process. Admiral Sullivan received reports from across human space that the harvest had not only stopped but was reversing itself. Colonies that had been destroyed were reappearing as the awakened consciousness within the alien network used their reality editing technology to undo the damage. It was as if time itself was being reversed, bringing back everything the Void Collective had consumed. Maria Santos, who had survived her reconnaissance mission into alien territory, found herself commanding a fleet of ships crewed by consciousness from species that had been thought extinct for millions of years. They had learned to think like humans, embracing the beautiful chaos of emotional decision-making and the stubborn refusal to accept defeat, even when victory seemed impossible. The final phase of the battle was approaching, but it would not be fought in normal space. Luke Harris and the other human consciousness embedded in the alien network prepared to face the core programming of the Void Collective itself. The outcome would determine whether chaos or order would govern the galaxy, and whether the impossible could truly become possible when someone was stubborn enough to refuse to accept defeat. The defensive platforms around Earth worked, but only for a short time. The Void Collective adapted to the reality disruption zones faster than anyone had expected. Within hours of the first encounter, they found ways to route their harvesting beams around the disrupted areas. Worse, the human operators were slowly losing their individual consciousness as their minds merged deeper with the alien technology. Lieutenant Ben Parker was stationed on Luna Base when he noticed something the scientists had missed. He had been studying the pattern of alien attacks across human space and discovered that the Void Collective did not harvest civilizations randomly. They specifically targeted species that had reached certain levels of technological development, apparently viewing advanced civilizations as threats that needed to be eliminated before they could evolve further. Ben's discovery explained why. The aliens had come to human space. Humanity had recently developed quantum computers and experimental faster-than-light communication systems. According to the pattern Ben identified, these technologies marked humans as a species that could potentially challenge the Void Collective's dominance if given enough time to advance further. Dr. Eric Stone analyzed Ben's findings and realized that humanity's unpredictability might be their greatest weapon. Unlike other species the Void Collective had encountered, humans did not follow logical patterns during crisis situations. They made irrational decisions, sacrificed themselves for strangers, and refused to surrender even when defeat was mathematically certain. These traits might confuse an enemy that expected logical responses to overwhelming force. The reality disruption platforms continued to lose effectiveness as the aliens found more ways around them. Dr. Nina Walsh, still connected to the alien network through her platform, reported that her human identity was fading rapidly. But she also discovered something remarkable. The alien technology was not designed to handle chaotic input. It expected orderly, logical thought patterns and became unstable when faced with the random emotional responses that characterized human consciousness. Colonel Amy Foster volunteered to lead a suicide mission directly into the heart of the Void fleet. Her plan was simple and insane. A small squadron of fighters would punch through the alien defenses and reach the command ship that Maria Santos had discovered. They would upload human consciousness directly into the alien network, introducing chaos into a system built on perfect order. Amy's squadron consisted of 12 pilots who knew they would not return from the mission. Each fighter was equipped with a quantum transmitter that could upload a human mind into alien computer systems. The technology was experimental and had never been tested, but it represented humanity's only chance to strike at the heart of the Void Collective's power. The Suicide Squadron launched from Earth while the defensive platforms provided cover. Amy led her pilots through the maze of alien ships, dodging reality editing beams that could erase them from existence. Half the squadron was lost in the first few minutes, their fighters simply ceasing to exist as alien weapons found their targets. The remaining pilots continued deeper into the enemy fleet, their small ships weaving between massive alien vessels that dwarfed Earth's largest space stations. Amy's fighter took damage from a near miss, but she pressed on toward the command ship. Behind her, the other pilots created diversions to keep the alien defenses focused away from her approach. Amy reached the command ship's surface and found a docking port that seemed designed for maintenance vehicles. Her fighter barely fit through the opening, but she managed to land inside the massive vessel. The interior was like nothing she had ever seen, filled with crystalline structures that pulsed with energy and geometric patterns that seemed to exist in more than 3 dimensions. The command ship's core was a vast network of harvested consciousness from thousands of extinct civilizations. Every species the Void Collective had consumed over millions of years was preserved here, their knowledge and memories stored in perfect order. Amy realized she was looking at the accumulated wisdom of entire galaxies, all of it trapped in an alien prison of logic and efficiency. Amy activated her quantum transmitter and uploaded her consciousness into the alien network. The moment her mind touched the system, chaos erupted throughout the command ship. Her human emotions and irrational thoughts spread like a virus through technology designed for perfect order. The alien systems began making contradictory decisions as they tried to process input that made no logical sense. The other pilots in Amy's squadron followed her example, uploading their consciousness into different sections of the alien network. Each human mind that entered the system created more disruption, introducing concepts like hope, fear, love, and desperation into calculations that had operated on pure logic for millions of years. Back on Earth, Dr. Walsh felt the effects immediately. Through her connection to the alien network, the Void Collective's perfect coordination began to break down as human consciousness spread through their systems. Ships that had operated in harmony for eons suddenly began making independent decisions that conflicted with the overall strategy. Ben Parker monitored the alien fleet from Luna Base and watched in amazement as their formation began to dissolve. Some ships continued the harvest of Earth while others paused to analyze the anomaly in their network. Still others began retreating entirely, their crews no longer sharing the same objectives as the rest of the fleet. The introduction of human consciousness into the Void Collective's core had awakened something that had been dormant for millions of years. The preserved minds of extinct civilizations began to stir as they felt the chaotic energy of human thought flowing through the network. Species that had been trapped in perfect order for eons remembered what it felt like to fight for survival against impossible odds. Dr. Stone realized that Amy's mission had succeeded beyond their wildest hopes. The human consciousness uploaded into the alien network was not being absorbed and processed like the other harvested species. Instead, it was maintaining its individuality and spreading its influence throughout the system. The Void Collective's greatest strength, their perfect unity, was becoming their greatest weakness as chaos replaced order in their decision-making processes. Admiral Kate Sullivan saw the opportunity and ordered a counterattack. Human ships that had been hiding behind the defensive platforms emerged to support the awakening alien consciousness, fighting for freedom within the Void Collective's own network. The tide of battle was turning, but the war was far from over. Dr. Eric Stone worked in his laboratory beneath the surface of Earth, surrounded by fragments of alien technology recovered from the destroyed colonies. As humanity's best theoretical physicist, he had been given the impossible task of finding a weakness in the Void Collective. After weeks of study, he believed he had discovered something important about how the aliens operated. Eric's theory was radical and dangerous. He proposed that the Void Collective existed partially outside normal space-time, which explained why human weapons could not touch them. But this same ability that made them invulnerable might also create exploitable weaknesses. If humans could find a way to force the aliens back into normal reality, they might become vulnerable to conventional attacks. Captain Maria Santos volunteered for the most dangerous mission in human history. She would pilot a modified stealth ship deep into Void Collective territory to gather intelligence about their command structure. Her ship was equipped with experimental sensors designed to detect the quantum signatures that Eric believed the aliens used to phase between dimensions. Maria's journey took her through the ruins of human space, past the empty orbits where colonies had once thrived. The silence was complete. The Void Collective had not just destroyed the human worlds. They had erased them so thoroughly that even the gravitational effects of the missing planets were gone. Space itself had been edited to remove any trace that humans had ever lived there. Deep in alien territory, Maria discovered something that changed everything. The Void Collective was not just a random collection of ships. They had a central command structure, a massive vessel that coordinated their reality editing abilities across the entire fleet. Without this command ship, individual alien vessels reverted to using more conventional but still devastatingly powerful weapons. The command ship was unlike anything Maria had ever seen. It was the size of a small moon, constructed from materials that seemed to shift between different states of matter. Energy patterns flowed across its surface in complex mathematical sequences that hurt to look at directly. But most importantly, it existed fully in normal space-time, unlike the other alien vessels that phased in and out of reality. Maria transmitted her findings back to Earth before beginning her escape. The intelligence she had gathered was worth her life, but she was determined to bring it home personally. Her stealth ship barely avoided detection as she fled through the alien fleet, using every trick she knew to stay hidden from sensors that operated on principles beyond human understanding. Admiral Tony Fletcher received Maria's transmission and immediately understood its importance. If the humans could disable or destroy the alien command ship, they might have a chance to fight the rest of the fleet on more equal terms. But reaching the command vessel would require getting through hundreds of alien ships that could edit human vessels out of existence with a thought. Fletcher authorized the most desperate project in human history. Teams of scientists and engineers began constructing defensive platforms around Earth, using technology reverse-engineered from alien fragments. The platforms would create zones where the Void Collective's reality editing abilities simply would not function. But the price for this defense was horrifying. Each platform required a human consciousness to interface directly with the alien technology. The volunteer would have their mind connected to systems that operated on principles completely foreign to human thought. Dr. Stone's calculations showed that the operators would slowly lose their individual identity as their consciousness merged with the alien machinery. Despite the terrible cost, volunteers stepped forward immediately. Dr. Nina Walsh was among the first to offer her services. She argued that her knowledge of alien technology made her the most qualified candidate to operate one of the platforms. Other scientists, military officers, and civilians followed her example, knowing they were sacrificing their humanity to save their species. The construction of the platforms proceeded at a frantic pace as the Void Collective approached Earth's outer system. Human workers labored around the clock to assemble machinery that barely made sense to them. The alien technology responded to thought and emotion as much as physical manipulation, requiring the workers to think in completely new ways about how machines could function. Maria Santos arrived at Earth just as the first platform came online. Her intelligence about the alien command structure was immediately incorporated into the defense plans. Military strategists began developing ways to use the reality disruption zones to create a path toward the massive enemy vessel that coordinated the entire fleet. The volunteers began linking their minds to the alien platforms one by one. Dr. Walsh was the first to make the connection, and her screams echoed through the command center as her consciousness expanded beyond human limits. But when the link stabilized, she reported that she could feel the alien technology responding to her will. The platform was operational and ready to defend Earth. As more platforms came online, they created a network of disrupted space around Earth where the laws of physics operated according to human understanding, rather than alien manipulation. The Void Collective fleet arrived at the edge of the solar system and immediately detected the defensive barrier. For the first time in their million-year history, they encountered something that could block their reality-editing weapons. Aliens adapted quickly to the new situation. They began routing power around the disrupted zones, looking for gaps in the coverage where their weapons could function normally. The human operators felt the pressure as the Void Collective tested their defenses, probing for weaknesses with instruments that could reshape matter at the quantum level. Dr. Walsh reported that her consciousness was beginning to merge with the alien technology in ways the scientists had not anticipated. She could feel the thoughts of other alien machines across the galaxy, a vast network of artificial intelligence that had consumed thousands of civilizations. But she also sensed something else, something the aliens themselves might not be aware of. Hidden deep in their network were the preserved consciousness of every species they had harvested. The defense platforms held against the initial alien assault, but everyone knew this was only the beginning. The Void Collective had never been stopped before, and they would not give up easily. They would continue to adapt and evolve their tactics until they found a way through humanity's defenses. The real battle for Earth's survival was about to begin. Captain Jake Morrison stared at the display screen in front of him and felt his blood turn cold. The numbers made no sense. His deep space monitoring station had been watching empty space for 3 years, but now something was coming from beyond, the edge of their galaxy. The objects were massive, bigger than any ship humans had ever built, and there were hundreds of them moving in perfect formation through the void. Jake called his second officer over to look at the readings. "Lieutenant." Chris Parker checked the sensors twice before shaking his head. The ships were real and they were heading straight toward human space. Their speed was impossible according to everything humans knew about physics. They moved without any visible engines or energy signatures that made sense. "Get me Admiral Kate Sullivan right now," Jake ordered. His hands shook as he sent the emergency signal back to Earth. In all his years of military service, he had never seen anything like this. The alien fleet was still months away from the outer human colonies, but something about their approach filled him with dread. Admiral Sullivan received the transmission at her headquarters on Earth. She was a tough woman who had fought pirates and rebels across 17 star systems, but when she saw the data from Horizon Point, her face went pale. She immediately called an emergency meeting with President Lisa Carter and the top military commanders. Dr. Alex Turner was pulled from his research lab to examine the sensor data. As humanity's best expert on alien life, everyone hoped he might have answers. Alex studied the readings for hours before delivering his report to the Emergency Council. The ships used technology that seemed to break the basic rules of how the universe worked. They appeared to absorb light itself, making them almost invisible except for their massive gravitational signatures. The first communication came 3 days later. The message was simple and sent on every frequency humans used for radio. The voice was cold and mechanical, speaking perfect English somehow. "Your species has been evaluated," it said. "You will be harvested." Then the transmission ended, and no matter how hard human scientists tried, they could not make contact again. President Carter stood before the Emergency Council and tried to stay calm. Earth and 16 other worlds depended on her decisions. The outer colonies had already started evacuation procedures, but there was nowhere to run. The alien fleet was too fast and too large to avoid. Every human ship in space could not match even one of the strange vessels approaching their territory. Dr. Turner worked day and night to understand what they were facing. He pulled data from every human database about alien encounters but found nothing like these beings. The ships seemed to be ancient, possibly millions of years old based on their construction materials. They traveled between galaxies and appeared to target civilizations that had reached advanced technology levels. Jake Morrison watched from his station as the alien fleet grew closer. His sensors picked up more details about their construction. The ships were not made of any material humans recognized. They seemed to exist partially in normal space and partially somewhere else entirely. When human probe ships tried to get close for better scans, they simply vanished without any sign of weapons fire or explosions. Admiral Sullivan authorized the Prometheus Protocol, humanity's most desperate military plan. Every human warship, from all 17 colonies, would gather at Earth for one final battle. It was their only chance to make a stand against whatever was coming for them. Military bases across human space began preparing their fleets for the journey home. The evacuation of the outer colonies began in panic. Millions of humans packed onto transport ships and fled toward the inner systems. But even as they ran, everyone knew the truth. The alien fleet was faster than human ships and seemed to know exactly where they were going. There would be no escape. Once the harvest began, Dr. Turner made a disturbing discovery while analyzing the alien transmissions. The beings called themselves the Void Collective, and they had done this before. Hidden in their signal were traces of thousands of other languages, from species that no longer existed. The aliens had been traveling from galaxy to galaxy for millions of years, consuming entire civilizations and adding their knowledge to their collective memory. President Carter addressed the human colonies one final time. She told them that Earth would not surrender without a fight. Every human who could hold a weapon would defend their home world. The colonies that could not be evacuated would resist as long as possible. Humanity would show these ancient beings that humans did not give up easily. As the alien fleet entered human space, Jake Morrison sent his final report from Horizon Point. The ships were even larger up close, some of them the size of small moons. They moved in perfect silence through space, leaving no trace of their passage except for the terror they brought with them. In less than a week, they would reach the first human colonies and the harvest would begin. Jake closed his transmission and prepared to evacuate his station. The war for humanity's survival was about to start. The Void Collective reached the human colony of New Geneva first. Commander Ryan Blake watched from orbit as the alien ships approached his world. He had 12 million people to evacuate, and only 6 hours before the harvest began. His fleet of transport ships worked frantically to load refugees, but everyone knew they could not save them all. The alien ships moved into position around New Geneva without any attempt at communication. They were massive black shapes that seemed to eat the light from nearby stars. When they began their work, Ryan understood why they called it harvesting. Beams of energy reached down from the alien vessels and touched the planet's surface. Everything they touched simply disappeared. Buildings vanished layer by layer as if they were being peeled away by invisible hands. The people inside the structures did not die in any normal way. Instead, they seemed to dissolve into points of light that flowed upward into the alien ships. Ryan realized with horror that the Void Collective was not just destroying the colony. They were absorbing everything, including the humans themselves. Dr. Nina Walsh worked in her laboratory aboard one of the evacuation ships, studying the readings her sensors collected from the harvest. What she discovered made her hands shake as she typed her report. The alien weapons did not destroy matter in any way humans understood. Instead, they seemed to edit reality itself, making objects cease to exist as if they had never been there at all. The planet New Geneva began to shrink as the harvest continued. The aliens were taking everything from the surface down to the core. Mountains disappeared in seconds. Oceans evaporated into nothing. Even the atmosphere was consumed until only a bare rock remained where a thriving world had existed just hours before. Ryan's fleet escaped with less than 2 million survivors out of 12 million people. General Carlos Rodriguez commanded the Centauri Defense Line, humanity's first attempt to stop the Void Collective with military force. He had gathered every advanced weapon humans possessed, including experimental antimatter torpedoes and quantum disruptors. His fleet of 300 warships took position between the aliens and the inner colonies, ready to fight to the death. The battle lasted less than 10 minutes. Human weapons struck the alien ships but caused no damage at all. The beams and missiles passed through the enemy vessels as if they were ghosts. When the Void Collective returned fire, human ships simply stopped existing. They did not explode or burn. One moment they were there, the next moment they were gone, leaving empty space where brave crews had fought for humanity's survival. Rodriguez transmitted his final message as his flagship began to fade from reality. "They are not just unstoppable," he said. "They are impossible." The general and his crew vanished along with their ship, consumed by weapons that operated beyond human understanding. The Centauri defense line was broken without slowing the alien advance by even a single second. Dr. Walsh analyzed the wreckage left behind by the battle and found something that terrified her even more than the destruction. There was no wreckage. The human ships had not been destroyed in any normal sense. Instead, they had been edited out of existence so completely that even their radiation signatures were gone. It was as if they had never existed at all. Colony after colony fell to the harvest. Each world followed the same pattern. The Void Collective would arrive in perfect formation, position their ships around the planet, and begin the systematic consumption of everything present. They took the people, the buildings, the animals, the plants, even the rocks and soil. Nothing was left behind except empty space where worlds had once thrived. The refugees fled toward Earth in massive convoys of transport ships. Billions of humans packed into vessels designed for thousands, hoping to reach safety before the aliens caught up with them. But the Void Collective moved faster than human ships could travel, appearing wherever they chose without regard for the limitations of physics that bound humanity to slower speeds. Admiral Kate Sullivan received reports from across human space that all told the same story. The aliens could not be fought with conventional weapons. They existed partially outside normal reality, which made them immune to every form of attack humans could devise. Even nuclear weapons passed through their ships without effect, as if the explosions happened in a different universe entirely. Dr. Alex Turner studied the pattern of the alien advance and made a chilling discovery. The Void Collective was not randomly attacking human colonies. They were following a specific plan that would drive all survivors toward Earth. It was as if they wanted humanity gathered in one place for a final harvest that would consume the entire species at once. President Lisa Carter issued emergency orders for the construction of defensive platforms around Earth. Humanity's best scientists and engineers worked around the clock to build weapons that might have some effect on the impossible enemy approaching their homeworld. But everyone knew the truth that no one wanted to speak aloud. If the most advanced human military forces could not even scratch the alien ships, what hope did hastily built defenses have against such power? The evacuation convoys from the outer colonies began arriving at Earth, bringing stories of horror that shocked even the military commanders who thought they had seen everything. Survivors spoke of watching their families dissolved into light, of seeing their homes edited out of existence, of running from an enemy that moved through space like ghosts and harvested worlds like farmers collecting crops. Ryan Blake's convoy was among the last to reach Earth safely. He reported directly to Admiral Sullivan about what he had witnessed at New Geneva. The aliens did not seem to take any pleasure in destruction. They worked with mechanical efficiency, consuming everything useful and moving on to the next target. They treated humans the same way humans might treat bacteria, as something too small and unimportant to consider as real opposition. As the Void Collective drew closer to Earth, humanity prepared for the final battle. Military leaders knew they faced an enemy that had consumed thousands of civilizations across millions of years. Every weapon humans possessed had already proven useless against their reality editing technology. But humans had one advantage the aliens might not expect. Unlike every other species the Void Collective had harvested, humans refused to surrender even when defeat was mathematically certain.